Hi, I'm Simon Lewin from the Global Health Unit at the Norwegian Knowledge Centre for the Health Services in Oslo and the Health Systems Research Unit at the Medical Research Council of South Africa. I'll be talking today about qualitative methods in evaluation. The aims of this lecture are firstly to examine the roles that qualitative methods can play in the evaluation of health interventions. Secondly, to explore a range of evaluation designs and models. And thirdly, to explore some of the debates regarding the epistemological and practical consequences of mixing qualitative and quantitative approaches in the context of evaluation. As we go through this material, I will try to illustrate the issues raised with examples from work in which I have been involved, as well as from the work of others. I'd like to just give you a short outline of the lecture content. In part 1, I'll be introducing evaluation and talking a little bit about what we can understand by the word evaluation in the context of qualitative methods. In the second part of the lecture, I'll be talking about using qualitative methods for different types of evaluation questions. In the third part of the lecture, I'll talk about specific applications of qualitative methods. And in the final and fourth part, I'll reflect a bit on what we've discussed and try and draw some conclusions. You can listen to each of these parts as separate files. Let's start then with the first part on introducing evaluation. As you know, evaluation is now seen as an essential component of intervention in public health or health services and systems. Government health departments, NGOs and other health services providers are called on a frequent basis to evaluate the work that they do. Such evaluations are a common context for the use of qualitative methods. The literature shows a proliferation of evaluation studies using qualitative methods in different ways. I would argue that qualitative methods have particular strengths within evaluation, including understanding how and why effects come about, in other words, understanding the process of an intervention or program, exploring participants' experiences of a program, explaining program outcomes in relation to social and organizational context, and also in examining how programs might be improved. Before we discuss qualitative methods specifically, I'd like to talk a little bit about what we mean by the term evaluation, and particularly how we would understand it in the context of health service interventions or programs. In the literature, there are many different definitions of evaluation. Moira Kelly, in the chapter that's part of the reading for your course, defines evaluation as appraising human activities in a formal, systematic way. Another definition from Patton views evaluation as any effort to increase human effectiveness through systematic data-based inquiry. From these and other definitions, I think you can see that evaluation research is focused on assessing some sort of change in activities, programs, and so on. Is secondly, based on the systematic collection of data, and third, addresses specified research questions in a transparent way. So these are some of the key features of evaluation research. Evaluation can clearly take many forms, as I'm sure you've seen in your reading so far. In general, qualitative methods tend to be used more for formative, that is process-oriented evaluation, than for summative evaluation, that is for evaluation of efficacy or outcomes. Before we move on, I'd like to say a little more about formative and summative evaluation, as these are terms that you'll see used widely in the literature. To elaborate on what I said earlier, formative evaluation is process-oriented. It usually looks at what affects the implementation of a program, and is usually conducted during the design and implementation of that program or intervention. Sometimes this may consider participants' views of how an intervention is being implemented, or health service providers' views, It may look at how well an intervention is implemented and whether it's being implemented according to plan. Summative evaluation, in contrast, is focused on the assessment of efficacy or outcomes and is usually conducted when a program is concluded or when a specific milestone has been reached. As you can probably tell from these different types of evaluation definitions, qualitative methods are more often used for formative than for summative evaluation, although often qualitative methods may form part of a summative evaluation. So for example, in a randomized controlled trial, you may use quantitative methods to examine the effects of an outcome and qualitative methods to understand how that outcome was achieved as part of a summative evaluation. Broadly speaking, qualitative evaluations within public health and health services are concerned with 4 different areas. Firstly, the development and piloting of interventions. Secondly, process, in other words, how programs are implemented and how they are received by those involved in them. Third, the outcome and impact of programs or interventions, as we were just discussing. And finally, theory building. In the second part of this lecture, I'll look at each of these areas in more detail. I'd like to end the first part of the lecture with a general point on how one might go about selecting methods for evaluation research. For all types of research, not just qualitative research, it is critical that the research method or method selected are appropriate for the research question. Choosing an appropriate method involves at least the following steps. Firstly, setting out a clear evaluation question. This is the starting point for all kinds of research, including research using qualitative methods. The second stage is to translate this question into research objectives that spell out exactly what will be evaluated, with which individual or groups, and in which settings. Thirdly, and based on these research objectives, you can consider the range of data that would be needed to address each objective. For some objective, you may need data of a qualitative nature, but for other objectives, other types of data may be required. Clearly, the types of data collected are collected in order to address the specific research objectives. So as I mentioned, those objectives and the evaluation question need to be the starting point for your decisions on selecting an appropriate method. And that is the final element. Think through which methods could be used to collect these data robustly and appropriately, and in a way that is appropriate to the participants and settings of the planned research. For some questions, a mix of qualitative and quantitative methods may be best. For other questions, qualitative methods may be most appropriate. I will come back to the topic of mixed methods evaluation later in the lecture. I'll end the first part of the lecture here. Thank you.